I remember calling and I was like, I don't know what's going on. And so you was able to help me like immediately, and all the things that you told me to do, like it alleviated pain and things. Hello, my name is Shantae Fears. I am a mother of one right now, and I've known Jamila for almost like a year, maybe a year and a half. And I've worked with her during my pregnancy. I also worked with her in her Postpartum Academy, which I really enjoyed that program. I think the biggest reason I decided to go with the pelvic floor therapist is just because I did work out a lot before I was pregnant, and I knew once my pregnancy was over that I wanted to be able to get back to the movements that I was doing before, but I also wanted to take care of my 70-year-old self.
So what was your biggest motivator when it came to scheduling a pelvic floor therapy evaluation? And what fears did you potentially have when going into pelvic floor therapy?
So when I used to work out with a trainer, I remember one time that she mentioned if someone ever got pregnant, that before they could come back to her, that she would want them to work with a pelvic floor therapist. And that was the first time I ever became aware or ever heard the term pelvic floor therapist. So I kind of looked it up, and I just saw the importance of, you know, taking care of your body once you had a baby. Just even understanding like what that muscle is, because a lot of people don't know what that muscle is. During my pregnancy, I believe I started having pubic bone issues or pain. And so that's when my doula recommended that I started to go see a pelvic floor therapist, because I really thought pelvic floor was for after birth. But she said, no, you can go during, and then I also started going to see the chiropractor.
So Shantae, what was one of the highlights of working with us at Mommas in Motion during your pregnancy?
Okay, so I think one of the highlights was literally just learning what my pelvic floor was, because I didn't even know that it was a muscle, and I didn't know all its functions. So just understanding the importance of that and how it related to labor, birth, things like that. Then also just learning how to breathe so that I could properly breathe the baby out instead of pushing, which in my birth I actually was just able to breathe out versus pushing, so that was really good. And then also the massages to prevent tearing. I think that was really important, just because as a first time mom, you hear about like the ring of fire. I think that's the term they use it, or when the baby's crowning, yes. And so you're like super terrified that like when this little bitty head comes out. So it was like, I felt confident when I was doing those massages to like stretch it out.
So we worked with you a lot during pregnancy. How did you feel when working with us during pregnancy? Like when you left therapy, how did you feel each time? And even when you came in?
I think one thing that I liked about it was that I felt like it was a part of my birth team. So it was just like an added layer. So even though, just aside from the actual pelvic floor work, just being able to sometimes just even ask questions about what to expect, or if there was something else going on, just having another person to talk to, just because the natural birth space, it's such a small space. Your first baby, it's so many things going in your mind, so you have to have that team that really keeps you in the right mind space. And so I think that was just a big part too, just being able to have someone to like talk to, and it was always something positive, because the outside world, when it comes to natural births, it can sometimes be negative. And then just knowing that some of the things that I was going through with my body and stuff was like normal, even just like with postpartum things. I remember calling and I was like, I don't know what's going on. And so you was able to help me like immediately, and all the things that you told me to do, like it alleviated pain and things like that. So just having someone that, number one, met me where I was too, because I remember at one point Jamila would try to give me all these exercises, and I would be like, Jamila, you have three items that I'm taking. And she would meet me where I was, because when you're like third trimester, it's like, listen, there's only so much I'm gonna do in a day. And so I appreciated that too, because it was like I still felt like I was getting things accomplished, but I didn't feel overworked.
And that's very common with a lot of people, a lot of clients that we see. You know, we really just have to like make sure that we make the programming, the exercises appropriate for that person.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you felt that way.
Yeah.
So you were really consistent with pelvic floor therapy throughout your pregnancy, into postpartum, later postpartum, after your first. How do you feel like that consistency affected your birth experience and your early postpartum and later postpartum?
So I think for my birth experience, I was just really confident by the time it was time for me to have my baby, like especially in terms of breathing the baby out. I knew what to do. I knew what my body could do. Like I understood how to contract and release my pelvic floor, because in the beginning that was something that I had to learn because I just didn't.
It's not taught.
Yeah, I just didn't know. I didn't even know it was a muscle there. So that was really helpful for pregnancy. For postpartum, I think it helped in terms of, I don't think I had much leakage coming into my postpartum. And then also, I think meeting with the pelvic floor therapist also helped with the making sure that my
abdominals,
did not split too far. And so just making sure like I'm getting up the right way, log rolling, all that, I think helps me postpartum too. And then with the postpartum program, it was 14 weeks. So that was just a long time for you to allow your body to do the healing that it needs to do.
Yeah. And you had great progress postpartum. Got back to weightlifting.
I did.
And doing higher intensity exercise without leaking.
Correct.
And feeling stronger.
Yes.
And
The
that
program
was
was really good.
A year postpartum.
Yeah.
Wow, so proud of you. So, in your postpartum phase, you not only were a one-to-one client, but you also did the Postpartum Movement Academy 14-week pelvic floor and core healing program. How did that affect you and affect your healing in the postpartum?
So one thing I will say is that I love the Postpartum Academy program for a couple of reasons. So for a person like me, like I said, I did work out before, and I weightlift and I bike and I did all these things. So in the past, a lot of times if I had like some type of injury, I would jump into my previous workouts too fast. And with me having a baby, and this being my first time, that was my first time having a baby, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't jumping back into those exercises too fast. You also hear, like, even just on TV shows, I remember it was like on Atlanta Housewives, one of the moms was talking about how she was still leaking. And I was just like, well, I don't want to just be out here just leaking. So I just wanted to make sure that I took care of my body so that when I did get back to those activities, I could do them without any issues, because I have to get back to them, but I wanted to make sure that I did it slowly. And so I think this program, for a person like me, it allowed me to safely do that because I just followed the program. And because it was a 14-week program, I was confident by the time I got to the 14 weeks that my body was prepared to do the next level. You see the changes week 1 to week 14. And then the program too is also a humbling program, because week 1, I can't remember the specific workouts, but they're just like,
they look easy.
Yes, they're like it's like heel slides and like all this stuff that if you previously worked out before, you're like, oh, this is nothing. But then when you do it, you're like, wait a minute, like.
And when you do it with the appropriate breathing and understanding how to connect to your core and your pelvic floor, it just totally changes everything.
Yes, and you realize you're weak. And you was probably weak before you started. So I think also too, I felt like my pelvic floor and my core was much stronger after I did the program, even before I started the program. So even before I got pregnant, I felt like my core, my actual core, not my abs, but my actual core was much stronger. And then she also designed me an advanced program because I was ready, but I was also like, can we just do some advanced stuff just to make sure? Because like I said, I jumped into stuff too fast, so I had to make sure. And so once we did that program and we checked in, I didn't have I wasn't leaking and things like that. Then I started back weightlifting. And what I will say, when I was weightlifting this time, I was actually activating my core like I should have been in the past, and I wasn't. And I think too in the program you have to unlearn some things that the weightlifting world teach you to do, like clenching, like what
thrusting your hips when you squat, and yeah.
So I love the program.
If you did not do the Postpartum Movement Academy or Pelvic Floor Therapy, what do you think is one thing that you wouldn't have learned that is like so crucial now for you that you learned through the Academy and Pelvic Floor Therapy?
Number one, what my pelvic floor is. So I don't know how my birth would have, I don't know how that process would have been without me knowing like
how to relax your pelvic floor.
Correct. Yeah. Or just being aware of it, and even just knowing, because like I said, since I did work out before, I will say before my first birth, my pelvic floor was much tighter, I think, from just like cycling and things like that. So like learning how to just like relax that muscle. I think it would have been very tense during my labor if I didn't learn how to work that muscle. And then from the Postpartum Academy, I think the core work was very important in terms of how to activate your core from the bottom. A lot of times we activate our core like at the top, but to truly activate your core at the bottom and actually be able to like hold that while you're doing different movements and things like that, I don't think I would have been activating it the correct way.
So you were so consistent with the Postpartum Movement Academy and even just therapy in general. How did you feel when you completed and graduated from the Postpartum Movement Academy, physically and emotionally?
So I think physically, of course, I felt stronger. And I think emotionally is a really good question to ask for that too, just because for me, like I said, because of my experience in the past, when say if I had like physical therapy and I had to go back into like once my physical therapy was done, I've always been like a little nervous. Like, did I do as much as I should have before I went in? And I will say the way that we did this program, like doing the 14 weeks and then having the advanced part, I think that gave me the confidence, both physically and emotionally, to be able to go out and start back working out. And I think too, also still having access to you, like, and you would like check in with me to make sure that there wasn't any leaking and things like that. I think we had like a check-in like a month after I started back weightlifting.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that allowed me to like go out there, push myself, and then if something did mess up, I could just come back.
Yeah.
But nothing messed up. But that support, just knowing it was there if I needed it, allowed me to kind of spread my wings.
Wow. If you could talk to a first-time mom who is preparing for birth and postpartum and just wants to get back to being her most strongest functional self, what would your encouragement be?
So I think my encouragement for a first-time mom would definitely be to make sure that you have a birth team, and to really take it seriously. I think a lot of times you think like, oh, like I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that, but you really want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. So once this baby gets here, if you want to get back to your regular activities, you can do that, but also just being able to lift your baby without leaking. Like, it's just like simple things, or just not like leaking 10 years after you've had your kids. So I think it's important to seek these resources and like take care of yourself, because it's, even though birth is this beautiful thing, it is something that changes your body, and you want to work on especially things that are muscles that you can actually control through strengthening and things like that. You want to get those muscles back to a place that they're strong and they're functioning the way they should, especially if you plan to have more kids. Because if you're already leaking with baby number one and you never get that fixed, that means that it's just, you're starting out at a weaker point. I think it's important to make sure you seek out these resources and just take care of yourself, because your 70-year-old self will thank you.
Yes. Thank you.